Okay, so our next talk is actually a remote one. I think they're okay projecting it from up there, but if not, I can use my laptop.
You guys can see my screen and everything.
Yep, we can see, and we can hear you too.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Chickles. I am a third-year astrophysics graduate student at MIT. I'm not an expert on LLMs, but nowadays I frequently use them in my everyday life, both in research and in non-academic settings. I'm not alone in jumping on this trend. Similarly, many of my peers have begun experimenting with this new technology and have found ways to effectively use LLMs to save time or brain power. So I'll be talking about an informal survey of LLM use amongst my peers, not meant to be a comprehensive survey of how all my grad student peers use LLMs and vice versa. Not everything I say will describe my peers' perspectives on Gen I. I'll also talk about my personal opinion as someone who uses ChatGPT very frequently. So with that disclaimer aside, let's jump into what I have learned about how my peers use LLMs. Again, this is not meant to be comprehensive. There are about 50 graduate students at MKI. So this survey, which has 17 responses, only represents a subset of all the students in my division. Of the 17 respondents, I asked which LLM platforms they have used before, even if it's just once. And as you might expect from naturally curious graduate students, the majority of my peers have used ChatGPT before, including a good chunk of people who have used ChatGPT Premium. From chatting with my peers offline, some of these students have paid for ChatGPT for themselves, and others have advisors who have funded their subscription. Another popular LLM platform amongst my peers is GitHub Copilot. This is not something I have experience using, so the videos you're about to see are pulled right off Copilot's website. But Copilot has a chat assistant that can provide code explanations and is equipped with knowledge of the docs in GitHub. So for example, this person has written a function and then asks GitHub Copilot to write code to test this function. And then it thinks and goes ahead and writes those tests. The way I have seen my peers use GitHub Copilot is through the text editor Visual Studio Code, where they can write code and it will suggest code completions. This also seems to have some knowledge of astronomy equations. I have seen how my peers will write an astronomy equation and it will suggest how to complete it. In addition, a couple of my peers have used large language models that have been explicitly trained on astronomical data. So on the archive a few weeks ago, the now publicly available AstroLlama. It's a conversational tool like ChatGPT, but explicitly trained on over 300,000 astronomy abstracts, introductions, and conclusions from the archive. So for example, here I have given AstroLlama one of the MIT astrophysics oral exam questions that I'm currently studying. And I'm still learning how to best use this kind of domain-specific tools, but first observations are that AstroLlama is much faster than ChatGPT-4 and more concise when it comes to astronomy-specific questions. In both cases, however, I and some of my peers have noted that they're often unreliable at solving equations or multiple step problems, and they're better at compiling information or answering conceptual questions. This is perhaps not too surprising as AstroLlama was trained on paper abstracts rather than the actual meat and equations of papers. One of my peers also mentioned using ChatGaia, which is has knowledge of the Gaia Space Telescope and is a plugin for ChatGPT. It can do things like writing queries to access Gaia data or plotting data from CSV files of Gaia data. My peers also mentioned using LLM platforms like Claude AI, BART, and the writing assistant Grammarly. I also asked my peers of the LLM platforms that they have used before, how frequently do they use it? Approximately a third of my peers are regular, everyday users of at least one Gen AI platform, with the most popular, regular, everyday platforms being GitHub Copilot and ChatGPT. But also, one respondent uses BART every day, and another uses Grammarly every day or almost every day. Another quarter of respondents use LLMs weekly, and another quarter uses LLMs approximately monthly. So for those of you that are wondering what could one possibly using Gen AI every single day for, here is an example of an everyday ChatGPT user, aka me. I looked at my ChatGPT history from the past 4 weeks and saw that I start a new chat 1.68 times a day. And this is just opening a chat, and within each chat, I usually ask multiple questions. About 50% of my chats are science related, where I usually ask conceptual questions like, what is a Cepheid variable, or what slit width should I choose on a spectrograph? 13% of my chats are coding related, and 35% of my chats are non-academic related. For example, I've asked it to write a packing list for a 12-day trip to Hawaii, which is where I currently am. I've asked it to help me navigate adulting, like how do I prepare for a snowstorm, as well as home maintenance, like what are those valves underneath my sink, and how do I turn off the water to my dishwasher. I've also asked my peers what they use LLMs for. The most popular answer was for coding, including code generation. From my personal experience, I have had great success at using code generation that uses popular libraries, for example, Matplotlib, TensorFlow, NumPy, SciPy. For example, here I asked ChatGPT to write me a structure finding algorithm to find halos and dark matter simulations as part of an assignment for the MIT course 8902. The code ChatGPT gives back is well documented, it's easy to understand, and in this case, it ran without errors. It even makes use of sklearn so that the algorithm runs in a very reasonable time. However, I have learned to grow cautious when I ask it to generate code with lesser known or domain-specific libraries. In these cases, sometimes ChatGPT will provide convenient functions that unfortunately don't exist. Similarly, for error messages that I don't understand, I've had a lot of success just pasting in the error message with little to no context, and it gives me helpful pointers about what I could try next. Other applications that my peers use LLMs for is time-consuming tasks like summarizing the work in a field. The big limitation here, though, is that ChatGPT is unable to provide URLs or specific papers. If you ask it for papers, it will give you some realistic but non-existent papers. Many of my peers also mentioned using LLMs to learn about concepts in a function similar to a Google search or looking up a topic on Wikipedia. For example, here I asked ChatGPT another of my oral exam study questions about exoplanet detection methods. So this way I could avoid navigating a long, detailed Wikipedia article where a lot of the information is not relevant to my specific question. It also helps me avoid navigating multiple websites in a Google search, which will have different formatting, different intended audiences, and then having to compile all that information to answer my question. So in this way, ChatGPT is a great time-saving tool since it can immediately give you a 1-paragraph explanation specific to your question. Of course, the drawback is that it doesn't provide citations or point us to a source where we could verify the information. But I kind of think of ChatGPT like a Redditor. It seems knowledgeable and confident, but it might not get everything right. But that doesn't stop me from going to Reddit when I want a real answer. In the same way, I still find ChatGPT useful, even if it's not 100% accurate. Another popular application amongst graduate students is for drafting emails. For me personally, ChatGPT helps me to respond quickly instead of taking like an hour to craft a message when there are many more urgent things on my to-do list. And for those of us who are still learning to navigate academia, LLMs can give suggestions and get the ball rolling, which helps to take that pressure off. For example, here I told ChatGPT that I'm going to be doing science on a telescope instrument that I haven't used before, and I'm nervous because I want to make a good impression with the telescope operator. And I asked ChatGPT for tips for that upcoming interaction and to help me come to the observing night as prepared and confident as I can be. A few peers mentioned all writing, drafting research papers and proposals using LLMs. And I personally have found that although ChatGPT's language style can be flowery or odd, it's still very helpful to get over that barrier of starting a task and to stop procrastinating on intimidating tasks like writing. So here I wanted to propose for grant money to hold a weekly wine and cheese night. And since I was using ChatGPT 4, I could provide a PDF of the grant details. And although the response was flowery and not specific enough, and I would definitely need to write the proposal myself, I thought it was a pretty decent outline, which helps me write this proposal faster. Now I'm coming up on my time, but some other applications my peers listed was homework, although again, caution, it can struggle with multiple step problems. For learning a foreign language, for example, it can generate a story in another language and you can learn from that. In general, brainstorming for ideas, which I totally second. It is great for bouncing ideas off of. So I will wrap up here. These are all tasks that we could do on our own or could be done with existing technologies, like just using Google search. But it is intuitive to use LLMs and takes less power to just ask ChatGPT than go searching and compiling information ourselves. So although it is not 100% accurate, I think of ChatGPT like a Redditor that doesn't need to be 100% accurate to be useful. So I hope by sharing some examples from my peers and myself that through experimenting with LLMs, we have found some ways that Gen into has been a time and effort-saving tool so that we can spend more time and energy on the difficult and complex problems that AI currently struggles with. So thank you very much, and I'll take any questions if we have time, or I'll be on the panel later on.
All right, thank you, Emma. I would say maybe we have time for one question. You were pretty well on time with your talk. If not, we can save it for the panel. Okay, let's save it for the panel. Thanks, Emma.